Well, we're still early enough in the new year. Our children back at school, and a focus today on the children and their education. And, of course, one of those elements that affects all the parts of our lives that are important too is the fact that finance is important for our children and for our consideration for their future. Gavin Martin from Cornerstone Wealth is back with us again today. Hello, Gavin. Welcome back to 2020.
Oh, g'day, Neil. Great to be with you.
Gavin, last time we were talking, we chatted about our children and the fact that earlier this year that most of us probably received a school kids bonus, and it prompted something important for us to talk about, and that is how we fund our children's education. Let's get onto that topic today because I guess when our children are growing up, we've got them as little children, perhaps in primary school, it's hard to think ahead. But those years soon roll by and the expenses certainly start to accumulate. Really investing for our children's educational future is quite important for us.
Yeah, it's a really crucial thing for us to determine, and particularly if you have decided that private school education, so a Christian education, is important. I think there was a famous quote by C.S. Lewis about the importance of education and teaching them in Christian principles. But if you've gone down that track and decided that that is the approach you want to take, it might be the best thing for your child, but it also has financial implications as well. So whether that be primary school education or secondary school education, or you might actually be thinking about tertiary education and getting them through those years where there's HECS bills to pay as well. So it's really crucial to think through how you are financially going to pay for each level of your child's education, because it is very important.
Where does it start, Gavin? Does it start with just socking away a few dollars as you're able, or is there a determined investment strategy that every family needs to think about as part of where their children will be in the years to come?
Yeah, a lot of people understand the principles about finances, that it's not good to use debt for consumables. They should save rather than spend too much money. But often people don't think about the order in which they should do it, or what's the right order to approach it. And I think we've talked about before about the fact that you should have an emergency fund that can get you through those difficult times in life where you might have a car breakdown or some other job loss that will get you through a period of time. So having an emergency fund is a good starting point. But then if you have consumer debt, so you've got car loans, credit cards, store cards, those sorts of consumer debt, then it's not worth putting money aside for saving for education. You really need to focus on paying off the consumer debt before you start putting money away for your child's education. So it's really only after that you've paid off all consumer debt and you might just have a home mortgage that you would start to think about putting aside money for a child's education. But then that's another decision you need to make as well, because one of the cleverest ways and simplest ways to enable you to pay for your child's education is to pay down the mortgage. Because if you, at the point in time where you need to pay those additional fees, say for example you're starting your kids in private education at secondary level and your kids are currently in primary level, if you could actually pay down the mortgage by the time they are at secondary school, you've basically freed up all that mortgage payment that was previously going towards the mortgage, and you can put it towards school fees. So don't discount just paying off the mortgage as a means of saving for your child's education.
That's so important, isn't it? Because debt is always one of those things that's like an enemy, and if we can get it out of the way, it frees us up to do a whole lot of other stuff. And when it comes to the financing of our children's education, you've brought up an important point about private schools. Private schools are often very expensive, but there are some low-fee independent schools that certainly are worthy of looking into. I guess you could shop around, couldn't you, when it comes to private education?
Yeah, I think it's about planning ahead, so understanding what you're getting yourself in for and understanding whether that is affordable. We've talked about the fact that we've got 6 kids. For us to have all our children in a school, a private school that's, say, a $20,000 per child annual fee, it just isn't feasible. But there are good options in those independent schools where there's a capping of the fees for after the first three children, so you don't pay for the fourth, fifth and sixth child at that particular school. So you can shop around and find the culture that's right for you, and the financial arrangements that are right for you as well.
And not every family will be even thinking about putting their children into a private school, but for those that can, there are some valuable benefits, of course, with the culture of the school, the values that are a part of the school. Those are the sorts of things I think that people are most attracted to. Not always that the actual standards of education for children will be much different to that available in state schools. That perhaps is a whole different discussion to have, but there is a sense in which when you go to a private school, you're going there because you're paying for the environment that your children will go into, values and the sort of environment that your children will grow under.
Yes, and that might change over time as well. I've spoken to a number of business people who have had their children in private schools, and their business has gone through a particular downturn, and they've had to make the decision to pull them out just because their finances didn't add up anymore. So I guess there's that point that you need to make decisions on an ongoing basis and make the right decisions at the time, because it's not necessarily a bad thing where you need to make those kind of decisions. There was an example of a ministry in the States where their finances weren't adding up, and so they cut back their staffing costs, and some of the staff went back 2 or 3 days a week rather than a full week, and it actually had greater ramifications. So don't be afraid of finances and I guess a reduction in finances changing the way that you're structuring your life, whether that be in education or whether that be in other areas.
And Gavin, some schools, if they're a private school, have provision for volunteer time, which offsets some of the fees for private schools, and that should be taken, I guess, into consideration when you're coming up with an equation as to whether it works for you affordably to actually go to a private school.
Yeah, exactly. If you can see that you've got time available and offset some of those costs, I think it's well worth considering. But if you do end up having paid off the mortgage and then are thinking about what to do with the funds to put aside for education, then you really need to, I think as we previously discussed at another session, was think about what structure to invest the money in, and then think about the underlying investment after that. So there's a range of options there, but it's important to firstly understand your range of investment structures and then look at the underlying investments after that.
It's good advice, Gavin Martin. Get rid of that debt. That's the main enemy, and there are some attractive investments that you should use to be able to fund your children's education, not necessarily ones that are specifically set up for that purpose, but those that are doing well for you at the present time. Gavin, I'll point people to your website, www.cornerstonewealth.com.au. Gavin Martin, always good getting your insights. Thanks for being with us again today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil. Great to be with you.